So, happy Tuesday, everybody. I'm Lisa.
And I'm Jamie.
And you're probably sick looking at us, aren't you? So, drum roll.
Drum roll.
It's Danielle Alves, everybody. She's back.
Hi.
Back.
Hello, everybody.
I missed you, Danielle, because I had to put up with Jamie on my own.
Aw, I missed everybody too. It seems like forever since I've been on. Like, I think I was trying to think. Like,
forever.
Yeah, like a month or what? I don't know. But I have been listening, and you guys are still great. And I think you guys have covered some great content. I've enjoyed hearing it, and I think you've done wonderful. So, but I mean, I'm glad to be back.
But we're going to take things a little different twist this week, and the twist is Danielle Alves, the Michigan mood ring, knows absolutely nothing about this case. I've not told her a single thing.
That's true.
We're going to present it to Danielle for the first time live here, and you're going to get her reactions to it because it's fucking weird. Just going to put it, it's weird. Weird.
Everything that we do is weird.
Oh, this is like a whole other level of weird.
Okay.
But Danielle knows nothing about it, and we're going to educate her on Dolly.
Okay.
Now, the reason that we first come across this case is kind of weird as well. A few years ago, we were doing a quiz. And one of the questions in the quiz was, name 3 famous dollies. I'm like, okay. Dolly the Sheep, Dolly Parton.
Yeah.
And then...
That's the only 2 I know.
I've got nothing. I can't think of a... There's not another one. There's not. That's it. There's only 2. There's nobody else in the world called Dolly. So,
there's nobody else in the world.
I could not.
We know.
Do you know another one?
I don't. Those were the first that came to my mind.
I know one now, but that's
I know one now.
After.
So after this quiz, we come in, whatever, went on Google. Is there actually another one? There was another couple actually, but this one, like, really? Let's look at this more.
Famous, right?
What we looked into was what the fuck, and we're now going to tell you all about it.
All right. I'm a
Kelly
little nervous.
Kelly had a goat named Dolly, so we could have, if I'd known that at the time, I would have been like, Dolly Parton, Dolly Sheep, Kelly's goat, and I would have won the quiz. I would have won the quiz, but I didn't. So if you're having a quiz after this episode, you can now answer that question.
Okay.
I'm saying Dolly Oesterreich.
Ostrich? Not like a bird. Ostrich?
Or Oesterreich? Oesterreich. Her actual name.
Sounds quite, yeah.
Her actual name isn't Dolly. It's actually Walburga.
That's the same word, yeah. Walburga. So she's not even a dolly, so you can't even name her.
She is.
Wait.
She's
That's a first name?
Yeah. So,
yeah.
This is her. Walburga Dolly Oesterreich. Now,
Walburga.
Obviously, she's of German descent.
I think I would have changed my name to Dolly also.
Yeah. And Walburga being kind of a bizarre name, her parents emigrated to the US and she was known as Dolly, even though her official name was Walburga. Everybody called her Dolly.
Okay.
Because it was more suitable to America, I suppose.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, I don't think we have too many Walburga Americans.
Yeah. But her parents are from Germany.
Yeah.
So let's learn a little bit about Dolly. Just on first impressions, Danielle, what do you think of Dolly there? That's a picture of Dolly. It's obviously been colorized because this was taken many, many years ago.
I don't know. The way she's looking off, she's got a little mischievous look to her. I don't know.
Oh, she's mischievous, all right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Is that a fox?
Do you, I think that is a fox, which is...
Yeah, she's got that... Is that
You'll find out more about the furs later as well.
Okay.
Do you think she's an attractive lady?
I mean, I think she's probably middle of the road. It's hard to say because I'm not sure how old she is in this picture. She's got big, bright eyes.
I can't tell if this is her breasticles away down here.
That's what I said. She's kind of got the belly thing with that dress. I'm like, I don't know.
Is that her breasticles? Because they're hanging quite low there.
Well, this...
Anyway,
didn't they wear like corsets back then? I don't know.
Oh, clearly she's not.
No,
but
clearly.
Yeah, that's Dolly. So let's put her away for a minute. We'll see her. We'll see more of Dolly.
Put her away.
Foxy lady.
Yeah. We'll see more of it. Well, we need to be in a row, right? Are we ready to begin then? Are you ready to be told a story?
So.
This is for Danielle Elvis and everybody else who's watching.
Yeah.
So she was born Walburga, Korschel in 1880 to German immigrant parents. And this was shortly after her parents moved to the United States, although some of the things did say that she was born in Imperial Germany and she moved to the United States as an infant. So which one's true, I don't know, but most sources say that she was actually born in the United States. She grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And I think I've got a little map for people that don't know where Milwaukee, Wisconsin is.
Yeah, that's just the next state over across the lake, big lake for me.
Is it?
So here it is, here where this little red thing is, and that's Milwaukee, just in case you weren't sure.
And there I am in Michigan, the high five of...
Yeah, is Michigan over there. Just across a little bit of water. Is that Lake Michigan?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, that's just in case you... I went back to the wrong way. Look, there we go. Right. So the next thing that we know about her is that she left school in 1882 at the age of 12 in order to work in a textile mill, which nowadays you're like, what? But
Yeah,
in 1882, this was quite normal.
Yeah.
This is quite normal. She was a confident and popular child, and all of the other workers at this textile mill really liked young Dolly, who was described as attractive and charismatic.
Maybe at the time.
Okay, but in all fairness, that we don't know how old she was in that picture, and it's possible.
Oh no, she's called attractive later on as well.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Oh, are you shocked, Danielle?
well, a little bit, but hey, to
Well,
each their own.
if that shocked you, just you wait.
To each their own.
Yeah. If that little factoid shocked you, you're going to be shocked later. So working at this mill is where Dolly met Fred William Oesterreich. I don't know how to say it. She met Fred. And he was born in 1877 and was 3 years her senior. The two began dating when Dolly was 17 and Fred was 20, and they married 3 years later when Dolly was 20.
Okay.
Now, at the time they began dating, Fred was actually the owner of the textile factory that Dolly had been working in since the age of 12. Now, whether or not it was a family business that he'd inherited because he's still quite young, or if he'd bought it later on, that's unclear. Obviously, he didn't own it when she started working there because he would have only been 14, 15.
Right.
So, but anyway, at the time when they began dating, when she was 17 and he was 20, he was the owner. So he's quite a wealthy man. He comes from a wealthy background. And yeah, Jamie's going to continue. And he's going to tell you a little bit about them. And I've just got a picture to show you quickly. That's Fred.
Just to point out, because at the start as well, and before, it's just only just dawned on me that that's his surname what she takes, and yet that sounds very German as well.
He's German as well.
He is.
Yeah.
He's of German descent.
Oh,
Yeah.
I missed that bit. Wow, that was some really good research here.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
You have.
He's of
I
German
did.
descent
I
as
watched
well.
I watched it several times and read things, but yeah.
And there's a picture of them together as well, just in case you're interested.
Proof that they were together, huh? Wait,
Yeah.
that's the same woman?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, see, Lisa keep going on about the attractive thing, but there's reasons, obviously. But
Okay.
she's not just picking on her.
I am just picking on her. I am.
Anyway,
Right. You'll find out why I'm interested in whether you thought she was an attractive woman.
Beauty
Right.
lies in the eye of the beholder. So
indeed. The pair had dated and been intimate for 3 years when they married in the year 1900. And at the time, Dolly was pregnant. So whether it was a marriage of love or convenience, we'll never really know, obviously. Soon after the wedding, Dolly gave birth to their first and only child, Raymond Harold, born August the 20th, 1900. Tragically, his life would be a short one, and he died of what was reportedly some sort of lung disorder on July the 15th, 1910, aged
Aw.
just 9 years old, which is a shame.
That's a shame.
it
Yeah.
is.
And that's the only sympathy that I've got for Dolly.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is sad, though.
It is sad. So Dolly got heavily involved in Fred's business and was often seen on the factory floor of many, but he had quite a few factories by this stage. and she resolved labour disputes. I mean, she was genuinely well liked by all of the employees. They would confide in her and they trusted her, and she was just described as a polite, friendly, confident, outgoing young woman. Now, to all intents and purposes, Dolly and Fred were the perfect couple, at least as far as the business side of the relationship went. He was described as stern, whereas she obviously was friendly and outgoing. But he had a head for business, and he ran several successful businesses. And with the addition of Dolly, who was more of a people person than Fred, the two seemed to be a perfect duo, business-wise. But marriage-wise, all was not well in the relationship of Dolly and Fred, for various reasons, which we'll get into. James.
On Fred's part, he was a massive workaholic and spent many hours at the businesses throughout the years. When he did leave early, he often visited a local bar and got drunk before heading home. He could be an aggressive drunk, but apparently was never physically violent, and he often passed out drunk. This was a problem for Dolly in more ways than one.
Well, I mean, who would be happy with that? I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you
just
see,
wait for this next line, Danielle.
You see, Dolly was a massive nymphomaniac and craved sex almost constantly.
Look at that face. That's what I was waiting for.
As a result, she had multiple affairs, often with the workers employed at the factory, whether they themselves were married or not.
That's not good life decisions on the worker's part. I mean, if you're going to have an affair and fuck over your wife, basically, why would you do it with your boss's wife?
Yeah. And she had somewhat of a reputation amongst the male population as, well, for want of a better word, a slut. Yeah, at least that's the word that.
Oh.
And it seemed everyone knew of her transgressions. Everyone, that is, except for Fred.
Yeah, everybody knew apart from Fred.
So she was a bit of a doorknob.
I think a bit more than that.
She was the town bike.
Everybody had a turn, right?
Yeah, she was the town bike. Everybody had a ride.
Oh.
Yeah, like a dartboard, plenty of pricks. No, right. Anyway, affairs were short and many. That was until one day in 1904 when she locked eyes with a young 17-year-old boy who had come to the factory to fix a sewing machine. This young man was Otto Sanhuber, or Sanhuber.
Sanhuber, I think it's.
Wait, what? Say that again.
Otto Sanhuber.
And this was.
It was a 17-year-old boy who come to fix a sewing machine.
I bet he did. I bet he did.
Yeah. So he'd be the sewing machine in one of the factories that's broken. That's where they've sent out a 17-year-old boy.
Okay.
Otto, with his slight frame and friendly eyes, is said to have reminded Dolly of her dead son, Raymond, which make what is about to transpire between the two all the more creepier. Yeah.
Look, you remind me of my 9-year-old son who's dead.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
And when you find out what the relationship that, yeah.
Okay, so at this time he was 17 and she would have been 24. In her 20s.
24.
Yeah.
Okay.
And let's just show you Otto before we continue. That's Otto.
Obviously not 17 in this picture.
No.
No. But we've only got the pictures that we've got, so this is obviously later on.
Okay.
Maybe he is 17. Maybe he had a rough life, Danielle.
Hey.
Well, when you hear what happened to him, it might.
Right. So Dolly became infatuated with young Otto from that first sighting, even though he reminded her of her 9-year-old son that had passed away. It's just
There is
really, really Dolly. And
not
she knew from that moment that she had to have him.
Oh no.
So she made a call to the company who sent the repairman to fix the sewing machine at the factory and requested that a technician come to her home to fix her personal sewing machine.
Personal sewing machine, there's that new word.
Adding that she would prefer the young man who had come to the factory as he was friendly, polite young man and a good worker. So Otto was sent to Dolly's house.
Dun, dun, dun.
When the 17-year-old arrived, Dolly answered the door with a full face of makeup, wearing nothing but a red robe and what was probably far too much perfume. Dolly, being 7 years her senior at age 24, invited the nervous young man inside and took him to her sewing machine.
I bet she did.
She then sat on the edge of a sofa and posed herself seductively before slipping off her robe, revealing absolutely nothing underneath. Soon, the two were making love right there and then, and this was the start of their truly bizarre relationship, which would last for the next 10 years.
Well, first of all, that wasn't making love. That was just some raw.
Now,
we won't go
I'm
there.
going to show you a picture at this precise moment of the house. This is just the house that Dolly was living in. He went round to fix a sewing machine in. Now, you will notice that there is an addition to this picture, which I'm not going to explain yet. But that's the house. Just ignore that little arrow and the little dots at the moment.
It's like one of them little UFO pictures with a big red circle.
We'll find out what that arrow's for very shortly.
So Otto had his own Mrs. Robinson, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
James.
Dolly and Otto met up daily, often multiple times a day, whether at motels or at Otto's lodgings house for their trysts. Her appetite for sex was never ending. She then began inviting him over to the house, which became a daily event, where the pair would engage in their affair in Dolly and Fred's marital bed. But the neighbours, they began to notice the frequent visitor, and they knew of Dolly's reputation. I'm sure they did.
Yeah. Everybody knew apart from Fred.
Everyone knew.
I mean, do you really think he didn't know? Go on.
He was obviously in denial. But this was a whole other level of audacity, bringing her lover to the marital home, and a couple of the neighbours told Dolly that they had noticed, at which point she told them that Otto was her transient younger brother. Needless to say, they did not believe her bullshit story, and thus one of them...
They're like, bullshit, Dolly, bullshit.
Yeah, so they informed Fred of this daily visitor to his home.
Yeah, so one of them was told Fred.
Wow.
That's the end of the story then. It's all gone. Bye, see you later. See you next Tuesday. Bye.
Mm-mm.
Fred then confronted his wife, Dolly, with this information. But Dolly, who had clearly worried that one of the neighbours might tell her husband, as they'd already told her, so she knew it was coming, had already planned a cover story.
Yeah, I bet she
told Fred that the young man was a book salesman, but she had finally been firm with him that she was not interested in buying his books. You could fuck off with your
books. That's her story, that he was coming around all the time? Was that he was book salesman?
He was like really trying to get her to buy these books.
I think he was more firm with her, to be honest.
Yeah.
Oh!
Jamie!
Right.
So, yeah.
Jeez.
Fred seemed to buy this story, but it did pose a problem for Dolly. Those damn nosy neighbours, how dare they? They'd ruined the little thing that she had going on. She could no longer have Otto around the house anymore because they were obviously watching. And she'd managed to fool Fred, at least for the time being, into believing her book salesman bullshit. But if the boy were to be seen again and again and again and again, because it was a daily thing, turning up at her house, there's no way she can get out of it again. This is when she came up with her amazing plan, which she shared with young Otto at their next meeting.
Okay.
Dolly was a reasonably wealthy older woman who was interested in, infatuated even with this 17-year-old boy. He was a vulnerable, shy young man with very few friends who was overwhelmed by the attention being given to him by this mature older woman. And when Dolly told him her plan, the very poor Otto, who was at the time struggling to make ends meet, thought it would solve all of his problems. He would no longer have to work a menial job for very little pay, and he would no longer have to live in a slummy little boarding house, which was all he could afford. He wouldn't struggle to feed himself on this pitiful wage, and he would have some form of security. Sounds great, doesn't it?
It does sound great.
But then again, when you hear the details, you will realise it's not so great.
Dolly's master plan was to move Otto into the house.
The book salesman?
Mm-hmm. This way, the neighbours wouldn't see him coming and going. She would have constant, unrestricted access to him, and Fred would never find out. But wait! Doesn't Fred live there too?
Right.
How would he never find out?
Is she gonna keep him in the walls or something?
Almost. Well, this is where we refer back to the photo that I showed you a minute ago. And what was that pointing to?
A section in the attic or roof?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no, what?
Very observant, Danielle. Otto, you see, was not moving into the main house. She proposed that he live in the attic and would be locked in there while Fred was home and have access to the rest of the house when Fred left for work. Otto agreed, and thus he moved into the little attic room where their affair intensified. Now, with unrestricted access, Dolly demanded sex from Otto up to 8 times a day. And this went on for years. Even when Fred suggested that they move house, Dolly agreed, but only under the condition that the new house had an attic where she could store her precious furs.
Precious furs, all right, yeah.
Yeah, she needed an attic to store her precious furs to protect them from burglars. Now, she had, in this existing attic, it was padlocked shut, and she's the only one with a key, because it was protecting her furs upstairs.
Yeah.
Fred never questioned this. I mean, why would you? Who the hell expects that their wife has moved a sex slave into the attic? Really?
I was just going to say a sex slave. Now, granted, he was a young man, and I'm sure to some degree enjoyed things at first, but that's some pretty demanding.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, yeah, there's a lot of questions with that, and
it's
sort of
abusive. It's almost. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I guess we'll just go on with the story. I'm sure there's more to tell.
Oh, yeah.
This arrangement would continue for years.
Years!
And during the days when he wasn't being used for sex, but this is great.
This is weird.
This is really, yeah. I'll just read it to you. You'll realise that it's just quite twisted. Otto would busy himself by cleaning Dolly and Fred's marital home, and preparing the dinners that Fred would come home to eat after work.
Oh no, he was cooking
He was cooking their dinners
and cleaning.
and cleaning the house.
All the while, Dolly lived a life of leisure. She didn't have to do anything. But Fred thought she was doing everything, was impressed of how good of a homemaker his wife was. You're doing a great job.
Yeah, you're doing amazing. You cleaned the whole house. You've done all this other shit. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Otto was washing Fred's clothes and ironing his shirts, making the bed and doing everything basically. And Dolly was going shopping. And despite having both a husband and a sex slave, she was also carrying on having multiple sexual encounters with other men, because this woman was so clearly broken and addicted to sex that it's difficult on a level that it's difficult to comprehend. I mean,
She's a massive nymphomaniac.
Yeah, that's beyond an addiction. I mean, you're talking 8 times a day with Otto. She's married, so you're assuming that.
Oh, she's still sleeping with them as well.
And then has these other guys too.
Yeah.
And she's got all that time in her hands because he's washing,
And
cleaning, and making
he's cleaning
her
now.
husband dinner.
He's ironing his shirts, washing her husband's clothes, cooking his meals.
I mean, is there any talk of like diseases that she got or passed on?
No, but probably was. There probably was. So Otto, meanwhile, was feeling the pressure. With at least 8 encounters per day, he was experiencing some pain and discomfort downstairs. And yet this bizarre arrangement continued. Until one day, when Fred came home early, and he found Otto sat at the kitchen.
I know what's coming.
He found Otto sat at the kitchen table eating a leg of lamb.
I want Dolly Kelly's.
Yeah. The two men looked at each other, and Fred was like, "What the fuck are you doing in my house?" And Otto replied, "Please, sir, I was just hungry."
Oliver Twist moment.
Yeah. Fred obviously promptly threw this intruder out of his house because he doesn't know that he lives there. He's no idea that he lives there. He's been there for quite a few years at this stage. So Fred kicked him out. And Otto spent that night sleeping rough because he had nowhere else to go. When Dolly came home that evening and Fred told her, she was visibly shocked. It was actually legitimate shock, not for the reasons that Fred thought she was shocked.
That
it was
probably
because
helped, yeah.
she'd been rumbled and had gotten away with it. The next day, Dolly puts Otto up in a motel, and she'd already, by this time, spent a sleepless night formulating a new plan. She instructed Otto to go from Milwaukee, Wisconsin to Los Angeles, which is fucking miles away.
Right.
I don't know how many miles, but it's like on the other side of the country, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So she sent him to Los Angeles, give him some money, whatever, go to Los Angeles, find a job. I'll be there soon, she says. So he goes to LA and finds a job doing menial labour. And during this time, they're writing back and forward to each other, and he's just waiting on the day that Dolly would arrive in LA, because for years at this point, Dolly is the only human company he's had. He's all she's known. He's never been outside that house.
Yeah.
And now he's in Los Angeles on his own, and he's just longing for the day that Dolly arrives because he missed her. He was institutionalized at this stage, and he found it very difficult to interact with anyone else, and he wasn't comfortable. Jamie, continue.
Well,
I need to stop talking to her.
You might have some time for some physical healing, though.
Yeah, I like some of the comments coming in the chat. Like Fred Banana will help the road on a wet day, and he said, "Do you want to buy a book?" Can you imagine him dropping the lamb?
Like a lamb. Do you want to buy a book?
Oh my god.
Oh man.
That's Fred, though. I mean, wow.
Fred's a bit stupid.
Some people can fall for it, and her being shocked, he would generally like, well, she's shocked, so
I can't believe that he went to LA just because she said go to LA.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
But he's been institutionalized by this point. He's been in the attic for years.
Yeah.
Right. So when Dolly wrote Otto and told him she had convinced Fred that it would be a lucrative business move to set up a shop in LA, and announced they were coming, he was overjoyed.
He's like, "Yay, Dolly's coming! Woohoo!"
I take it the soreness had faded.
Yeah, he's not sore anymore.
He knew he couldn't go meet Dolly at the train station like normal lovers would after a long period apart. He couldn't even stand on the platform. To at least be close to her.
Because Fred would recognise him.
Yeah, because obviously if they were close,
he's going to be arriving with Fred. Because
so Fred was going to be there too.
Like, what's this fucking stalker? Is that the Lego lab selling me books? Fixing my wife's sewing machine.
Yeah.
But he had to see her as soon as she arrived. So what he done was hid on a bridge and waited and watched as they arrived, which is a bit stalky.
Creepy.
But there you go. As the Oesterreichers arranged to get a property in LA, obviously with an attic, which was quite rare.
Got to have an attic for our furs.
This was rare in LA, but one of Dolly's only specifications, funny enough.
Yeah, I don't care where it is as long as it's got an attic for my furs.
I need an attic.
Otto was kept in the loop, and when their new home was found, before Fred and Dolly even moved in, their secret house guest had already made his way there.
Yeah, he moved in first
in the attic and continue where they left off, which is strange. I don't know how is he getting into this little place and getting set up before they arrive. I don't know.
He's there first, already living in the attic.
So him being available for Dolly's sexual needs, while doing all of the housework in between times, and then being locked in the attic, where he wrote short stories all evening, making sure to remain as quiet as possible. If he did accidentally make a noise, like a sneeze or a cough, and Fred heard it, Dolly convinced him it was a mouse or something outside.
I'm sure I heard somebody sneezing. No, it was a mouse.
A mouse that coughs.
And I mean, probably because Fred was so drunk most of the time, as we said earlier. By the time he arrived home, he probably believed that, or
whatever. Then, must be a coughing mouse.
Dolly and her husband Fred still had sex at this point, as Danielle mentioned earlier, surmised, in their marital bed, while Otis was directly above them, seething with jealousy, being forced to listen. Dolly once asked Fred to be quiet, and he said, "Why?" She said, "If anyone hears us, that would be embarrassing," to which he replied, Don't be silly, nobody can hear us." And she was like, "You're right." But because she couldn't exactly say, "Well, my sex slave is in the attic," and shut the fuck up, Fred. Some prick in the attic.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
So she was asking him to be quiet.
Yeah, but then when he
She
said,
just get
"There's
upset.
why," she couldn't say. Well,
So basically, Fred was a loud lover.
yeah, Fred was quite vocal, apparently.
He
Just
wasn't
so,
quiet as a mouse.
that's Dolly, and that's Otto. Just to remind you, in case you forgot what they look like.
Okay.
Right. So the problem was soon solved, though. When Fred was in the garden one afternoon, and he saw a shadow in the attic window. Is this the right one? What problem? How did you finish? All right. Yeah. Yeah. The problem of him making noise was soon solved. When Fred was in the garden one afternoon, he saw a shadow in the attic window, and
Big
he's like,
mouse.
"What the fuck
That's
is
a
that?
fucking big mouse.
Something up there." So he stormed into the house and he told Dolly, because obviously you had to tell Dolly because she's got the only key.
Convenient.
So he needs to get the key off her to go and check this shit out. But Dolly was like, "Calm down, Fred. You're very tired. You're overworking yourself. The attic's locked. There's no way that you saw something in the attic. Just you go and lie down. You've worked too hard. You go and have a nice little lie down and I'll go and check the attic."
Oh yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah.
Fred goes and lies down and Dolly goes and checks the attic. And then she comes back. She's like, "There's nothing there. It's just my furs." Obviously, she's not going to be like, "There's a bloke up there." No, she's like, "There's nothing there. You're imagining things, Fred. You're seeing things because you've worked so hard." So she convinces Fred that he needs to go and see the doctor because he's clearly a bit barmy. He's
Oh.
seen things. So Fred goes to the doctor and the doctor prescribed him sedatives. So he began taking these, and this allowed Dolly and Otto to have sex more often. Dolly was
Oh, yeah.
demanding sex more often, even when Fred was home and passed out in the bedroom.
So now he's drunk and sedated.
Mm-hmm.
So this weird fucked up triangle that's probably got different shapes, like because there's other people involved, you're still having multiple affairs, continued. And Dolly even convinced Fred that they should have separate rooms so he didn't disturb her when he come home late. So obviously she moved into the bedroom that accessed the loft.
Oh,
How convenient.
So it's just like she goes to bed and he comes down and like, yeah.
She was quite the manipulator, huh? She got people
Yeah.
to do anything she wanted.
So Fred's business empire was very successful in Los Angeles, and over the years, Dolly began to despise Fred. He was an aggressive drunk, as we've already mentioned. He could get a bit mouthy. He didn't ever actually, it was verbal. There was no physical
I
violence.
was going to say, I don't see Dolly putting up with.
No, it was verbal. He was drunk and he was a bit of a twat, basically.
Okay.
But she obviously never really did like him very much or have any respect for him because she'd continued to have multiple affairs over the entire course of the relationship. She'd never been faithful to him. She had no respect for the man.
I don't think she could have been faithful to anybody she did respect. She's
got
She had
problems. She's got issues. She's got issues. She's a bit
issues.
mental. Sorry.
Yeah.
But Fred also didn't like Dolly much either. She got on his nerves, really. She actually got on his nerves. Their marriage ended up being one of pure convenience. Dolly was clearly only there for the money and financial security that being with Fred provided her. And Fred, in his mind, was only letting her stay and still staying with Dolly because she was a brilliant housewife.
She cleaned, cooked
She was
the garden,
cleaning,
so-
she was cleaning, she was cooking, she was doing his shirt, she was doing all this other. She was doing so much shit. How did she find the time? Yeah. It was fucking Otto, Fred. You fucking idiot.
You fucking idiot. Oh dear. So everything came to a head on August the 22nd, 1922. After attending a social gathering, Dolly and Fred made their way home. Otto, already knowing what time they were expected home, had safely tucked himself in the attic, as he did every day, apart from the day when he got caught with the lamp. Yeah, he learned his.
Yeah, but it was
lesson.
early that day.
Yeah. Fred had been drinking, and this probably intensified the niggles they had against each other. So by the time they got indoors, an argument ensued, and the two were raising their voices to each other, which escalated to a full-blown shouting match. Fred banged his fists on the furniture as both of them screamed at each other. Upstairs, Otto, listening in, believed Dolly was in danger, so he snuck out of the attic. He retrieved two .25 caliber pistols from the bedroom and made his way downstairs to save Dolly. When the young man entered the room, the married couple were when
Oh my God!
When the young man entered the room the married couple were in, they both stopped in their tracks, both shocked to see Otto standing there for different reasons.
Yeah.
And Fred actually recognised him, of course. What ran through his mind is that moment, as I can't imagine, because he recognised him from Milwaukee, and here he was in the home in LA years later.
I can't even comprehend what's running through. Like,
Yeah.
what the
Right.
fuck?
And he said something along the lines of, "What are you doing here, you rat?" Before,
What are you doing here, you rat?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before lunging towards Otto and grabbed him by the wrists. A struggle ensued as Dolly cried out to Fred to stop it, stop it.
And what Fred's thinking, why is she telling me to stop it? We've got a burglar. What the fuck is she? It's like, Fred, stop it, stop it.
Yeah.
And then a single gunshot rang out. Otto had pulled the trigger and shot Fred in the temple. But Fred was still alive despite having a bullet now lodged in his brain. He stumbled backwards and steadied himself on a wooden chair. Dolly then said to Otto, "What have you done? You have to finish it now." And then two more shots rang out as he shot Fred in the chest, in such a close range that it burnt Fred's shirt. And he was already half covered in blood from the head wound. Fred crumpled to the floor, dead, and the wooden chair landed on top of him.
So yeah, Fred's
Ooh,
dead.
Wow.
Fred's dead, everybody.
Sounds like Otto had just reached the end of his whatever sanity he had and just let it all out.
The neighbours in the surrounding homes all heard these three gunshots. Immediately, one of them rang the Oesterreich's home to see if they were okay. As Dolly and Otto were inside, panicking to quickly come up with a plan, the phone began ringing in the background, and they ignored it. Instead, they hastily staged a burglary. Otto removed the watch from Fred's body and took some money from the house. He then took Dolly upstairs, put her in a closet, locked the door, and threw the key into the far corner of the room before tucking himself back into the attic. The neighbours had obviously already called the police after hearing gunshots and getting no response on the telephone, and the authorities were on their way. When they arrived, they found Fred shot to death and discovered Dolly locked upstairs in the closet. Her reactions, however, were not typical, and this initially automatically made the police suspicious of her. However, she's locked in a cupboard and the key's on the other side of the room, and they could not explain that away, and it gave her the perfect alibi. For some reason, despite arriving just moments after the gunshots rang out and finding one resident dead and the other one locked in a cupboard upstairs, the police did not thoroughly search that house, because if they had, they would have found Otto in the attic, still covered in Fred's blood and still holding on to the two pistols that had been used to end Fred's life. But they didn't find Otto because he didn't look. You would think they would search the property to make sure it was clear, but no, for some reason they failed to do so. Thus, despite their initial suspicions of Dolly, they had absolutely nothing to prove her involvement, and they had absolutely no idea that Otto even existed.
So this wasn't a hidden attic. Like there was obviously access to it that they could have, had they searched, they would have found it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she would have thought they would have looked around, but I suppose if the attic was locked or appeared locked, I
Yeah.
may think, oh, there's no need, but I don't know. After the murder, Dolly moved to a smaller home in North Beechwood Drive, which in itself isn't suspicious, because it would have been normal to expect that she could no longer bear to live in the house where her husband had been killed. What is weird, though, is that this new home also had an attic, and Otto moved in prior to Dolly's arrival again.
So he's still in the attic.
Wow.
Uh-huh. Now you might wonder.
She's moved him into the attic again.
Yeah.
Oh
Now
my
you might wonder why the fuck he's still in the attic. Well, despite not having to hide anymore from Fred, Dolly informed him that it was too soon to come and go from the house freely as Fred after Fred's death, so it was safer for him to remain hidden.
But that's not. But nobody knows what's going on inside the house.
It's not
He
really.
could have moved into the house and
That's
just
their
stayed in the
mind.
house.
That's their own mind.
Yeah, I mean, he could have been walking around freely and.
Yeah.
But no, he was still in the attic. He still. I mean, he could have been in the house, but still kept a low profile.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because they were so used to it. It seemed like the logic.
This
solution.
is really sad. Poor Otto.
Well, the only thing what actually changed in Otto's existence that he was now allowed a typewriter to write his short stories as opposed to a pen and paper, because Fred was no longer around to obviously hear him write.
Because that would have been a bit. What's that? That's a mouse. It's just a mouse upstairs typing. Don't worry about it.
Mickey Mouse now.
Clever mouse, cough and sneeze. Dolly then remained faithful to Otto. He moved into the main house after a few months, and they all lived happily ever after. The end. Well, no.
No.
That's not
what happened. That last sentence, that's not what happened.
Yeah. Totally fictional.
Dolly didn't remain faithful to Otto. He didn't move into the main house, and they didn't all live happily ever after. That's where it should have ended, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
After Fred's death, Dolly hired an attorney called Herman Shapiro to settle Fred's estate. It wasn't long before the two began a sexual relationship. All whilst Otto was at home, locked in the attic. After just a few months, Dolly presented her new lover, Shapiro, with a gift, a diamond watch, saying to him that she wanted him to have it and that it had belonged to dear Fred. Shapiro eventually figured out that this exact watch was mentioned in police reports as the very watch that had been stolen during the botched robbery that resulted in Fred's death. He questioned Dolly about this, and she claimed to have found it in the front yard after the murder and assumed that the perpetrators had dropped it as they escaped.
Boy, she's got an answer for everything, doesn't she?
Mm-hmm. As she do.
Up until now.
Yeah. Then enter a man called Roy Klum, a Hollywood film producer. Another one of Dolly's many, many lovers.
Many lovers.
And she gave him one of the pistols used in Fred's murder and asked him to dispose of it for her. Why do you think she go back and dispose of it?
It's just like she's making stupid choices now.
Involving everybody.
Yeah.
Klum did so, tossing it in the
La Brea
carpet.
I think it's La Brea carpet.
Yeah.
Why she couldn't have just gone and done that herself, nobody fucking knows, but she's decided to involve Roy Klum.
Person.
Give
Perhaps
him one
she's
of
thinking about having a sexual relationship with him.
Wow.
She is already having a sexual relationship.
Oh, she is, yeah.
She is. She's already having...
Maybe that's a part of it, yeah. It's like
so one of the guns has gone to Roy Klum to dispose of because apparently she couldn't go and throw it in the tar pit or the ocean. She's in LA. There's a big fuck off ocean right there. She couldn't have done it herself.
Dolly gave the second pistol to a neighbour and asked him to get rid of it.
What are you doing, Dolly?
Whether or not he was another one of her lovers is unclear, but at this point it's probably likely.
Oh yeah,
he is
absolutely.
Yeah,
he is.
Because this neighbour did so and buried it under a rose bush in his garden. So he's buried it in his own garden under. Oh my!
She's involving everybody else here. Like, just dispose of them yourself, you stupid bitch.
Yeah. In July 1923, almost a year after the killing, Roy Klum discovered Dolly was also sleeping with lawyer Shapiro. And he was furious, so he immediately went to the police and told them about the gun she had asked him to dispose of and told them where it was. When this story hit the media, which it did, the other man went to the police and told them Dolly had asked him to
dispose of. The other bloke that embodied the second gun.
I better go and tell them because now
she got me to do this as well.
It's all coming out now.
Yeah, this gun, along with the former weapon, were both recovered. They were damaged and corroded, but it was noted that they were of the same caliber used in Fred's killing. Because of degradation, striations could not be matched to the bullets used in the killing. All police had was testimonies of the two men and the gun being used as the same caliber. So, yeah. They couldn't get all the evidence off of that, but, you know, it's clear, isn't it, really? It's quite obvious.
Nevertheless, despite that being all they had was the two testimonies of these two men, because they couldn't get any striation matching or anything, they brought in Dolly for questioning. Her explanation was that the guns had been in the house for a long time, and after the murder, she wasn't comfortable having them around, so she asked these men to get rid of them. Under questioning, Shapiro let it slip that Dolly had given him Fred's watch, which she had told police that was stolen on the night of the murder,
Right.
and she never told police anything else. It was gone.
Yeah.
When police asked Dolly, she said, "I've never seen that watch before in my life." She didn't stick to the story and say, "Oh, I found it in the garden," which would have been the sensible thing to do.
Yeah.
What she told Shapiro, she changed it. "I've never seen that watch before in my life." However, Chief Inspector Klein, who was in charge of the investigation, and he had suspected her for day one, but he couldn't prove it, he went to Milwaukee and he scoured all the jewelers and all the watchmakers in Milwaukee to trace the watch that belonged to Fred and where it come from. And he eventually found the place that the watch originated and linked this watch to being the exact one that belonged to Fred by the serial numbers.
Finally, some good detective work.
Having proved that Dolly lied, she was arrested for first-degree murder. It was decided when she was taken to court to find out that it's an arraignment, you call it in America? That she should be held without bail until trial. This, however, posed a massive problem. Otto was still locked in the attic at home.
Wait, he couldn't get out when he wanted to?
No, she's locked a padlock, isn't she? She's protecting her furs. Even though Fred's now dead, she's still padlocking him upstairs in the attic.
Oh, Otto.
Yeah, so poor Otto was still
So poor old Otto was still in the attic. Dolly was visited by her lawyer and lover, Shapiro, who she lied to at this point and told him all about her vagabond brother who lived in her attic. And she asked Shapiro to go and check on him and his welfare. Shapiro promptly did so, entered the home, opened up the attic, and was confronted by a very thin, very pale Otto. Obviously, he's very pale, even though he's lived in Los Angeles. He's not been outside for 10 years, so he's a bit pale. Doesn't he look like me? Otto, on the other hand, didn't lie to Shapiro, and over the course of a few visits, he told Shapiro absolutely everything about his relationship with Dolly, about the killing of Fred. It was an accident, but how Fred had died.
How long it had been going on.
Shapiro, instead of going to the police, told Otto to get the fuck out of town and disappear in order to save Dolly. Because obviously Shapiro's in a fucking relationship with Dolly. Like, get the fuck out of here. We need to save Dolly. You need to go. Never come back. Just leave. And Otto did so. He moved to Portland, Oregon, and changed his name to Walter Klein. He would later marry a woman named Matilda, and the couple then moved to Vancouver, Canada. But we'll get back to Otto later, because he's going to come back up again.
These men still sticking with all that.
And just for the next picture, which I've not been keeping up with the slides on here, so give me a second. What number is it? 31.
Yeah.
Oh my god, are you moving that?
No, I ain't touching nothing. I can't.
Your mouse has a mind.
Yeah, that does. When I was preparing things earlier.
It keeps going back to 29.
Yeah.
Are you pressing something?
I'm not pressing nothing. We had this before, remember?
What the? You do it. Why are you giving me your mouse? Why are you giving me? I'm asking you to do it. I'm not asking you to give me your mouse. oh, wait a minute. I make it work.
There's a picture. Oh.
Yeah,
that's Dolly in prison.
That's Dolly with his magical furs.
Yeah.
You know, he's all these men are.
This is this heartthrob that people are falling over themselves to sleep with this woman all over the place because she's apparently very attractive.
Obviously, there was more to it than looks.
Well.
Quite experienced, you know?
Wow.
In 1925, the DA formally dismissed the charge against Dolly because the police still could not explain how she ended up locked in the closet.
They couldn't get away for that one.
And they knew nothing of an accomplice, so the evidence they had was not great. Dolly was free. And her new lover, her lawyer, who knew everything, all about a sex slave and Fred's murder, moved into the house and began living with Dolly.
Why would you move in with her? When you know everything, you know that she's had a sex life in the attic for 10 years.
Yeah.
Why would you?
Wow.
Well, at least this one was allowed to live in the house.
Well, yeah, he was allowed to live in the house, and he was allowed to come and go. So, but why? Why would you move in with her?
Maybe was she like a witch? Was she like
There must be
like,
something going
cast
on. There's some kind
spells?
of sort of, yeah.
potions?
No,
and
why would
spells?
you move in with her?
LA's high society were torn over the scandal. Some people believed Dolly was a murderer. Some even suspected Shapiro. You would, wouldn't you? Because he had the watch.
Yeah,
and
he's
stuff.
moved in.
Yeah.
Whilst others remained friendly, referring to her as a cheerful, bubbly woman who would never harm a fly. Plus, she was locked in the closet. She couldn't have possibly have done it. She became a controversial figure and was occasionally, over the years, a target of tabloid gossip, which you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, Dolly and Shapiro seemed to be getting along great. However, he worked long hours as an attorney, and he wasn't able to service Dolly 8 times a day as she had been used to with Otto. As a result of this, guess what Dolly did?
Guess what Dolly did?
She began several affairs.
But she didn't,
Sure.
Jamie. You're lying. There's no way. Not Dolly.
Dolly mixtures.
Oh.
They had a mixture of affairs. In 1928, a Mrs. R. Hendrick sued Dolly for $300,000 in damages for having an affair with her husband.
That's a lot of money.
That is.
Yeah.
Unsurprisingly, Herman Shapiro was not impressed to discover Dolly had been unfaithful. Really?
What did he expect?
Really, Shapiro?
What did
I thought you were a lawyer.
What did you expect, Herman Shapiro?
Yeah. But they managed to patch things up for a while. That is until 1930.
I don't know what he expected.
No.
So she's like getting on up there in years, and none of this is changing. It's quite the sexual appetite this woman
But he's
has.
shocked to discover that she had enough. What is he? He knows the history.
That's what I'm saying. She had to have a spell. There was some kind of magical spell.
There's got to be.
So Dolly continued to have a string of endless lovers, and the humiliation became too much for Shapiro. So, just as Roy Clume had done years before, Shapiro went to the police. He wanted revenge, and he knew everything. Because Otto had told him everything 7 years ago, back in 1923.
Yeah.
Shapiro knew exactly where Otto was as well, and he informed the police of this. You see, Otto and Matilda had moved from Vancouver back to LA in 1927. Why? I have no idea. Stay the fuck away, Otto. You were in another country. You
And he got on with his life.
You were
could
in
have
another
happily
country.
married.
You were gone. Now, this is pure conjecture on my part here, but there's nothing been proven to this. There was no other reason for Otto to return to Los Angeles. He didn't come from Los Angeles. He came
Right.
from Milwaukee originally. The only person that he ever knew in Los Angeles was Dolly. So I do suspect that he contacted her when he returned, because he didn't leave with any animosity. He only left to save Dolly. All he'd known for 10 years was Dolly. He'd been completely mentally broken down.
Yeah.
And even though he's moved on, he's found this Matilda woman, he's married her, and he's got a new life for himself, he's still psychologically broken. I do believe that it's very possible that in 1927 he has got in touch with Dolly and rekindled some sort of relationship with Dolly over those 3 years until this happened.
You know, it also
There's no other reason for him to go to Los Angeles, because the only thing that he knows in Los Angeles is her.
It makes me think of that Stockholm syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where
Something going on, isn't it? Yeah.
He never actually. There was no animosity, no arguments. He only left in the first place to save her, and it's kind of sad, really. I mean, he was away. He'd found happiness. He'd got a new identity. He's got a new wife that doesn't treat him like shit and lock him in the fucking attic.
right.
He's got a loving wife, and it's kind of a slap in the face to Matilda. But you got to think of all the damage that's been done psychologically over 10 years, because he was only 17 and this when she took advantage, really. So after Shapiro told the police of Otto's involvement and his location, which Shapiro knew at this point, Otto was promptly tracked down and placed under arrest, later being charged with manslaughter. Dolly was also arrested on a charge of conspiracy to commit murder, which in fairness, she didn't do. She didn't conspire to commit murder. She covered up a murder, but she didn't actually conspire to kill Fred.
No.
Right.
And just quickly, because this is the only picture I could find that had Shapiro on it, it's out in a newspaper, and it's got all three of them. So up the top there, you've got Shapiro. You got Otto over on the left.
Someone's caught Danielle.
I mean, none of them were real lookers, were they?
No, and Dolly down. What's with them all having these little glasses?
I don't know. Perhaps
they all seem to have these little glasses.
Should have fell for Harry Potter today.
And there's the secret room. That's the entrance to the secret room. So there's a door. There's a door there that the police could have went in.
A little
that door leads to the staircase going up to the attic. The police could have checked that, but they didn't. But whatever.
My goodness.
Like, what
you really can't make that up. I mean, it has to be a real story, right?
And there's a little photo as well for you of Otto in court.
Still with his little round glasses.
Still got his little glasses on.
Oh, Otto.
I think they probably needed to be wearing glasses. I think that's. Did they have glasses before or after? I don't know.
Could you imagine the psychological profile on these people?
Uh-huh. I mean, the media had an absolute field day with this story.
Of course they did.
Murder, sex, and just plain fucking weird. The media referred to Otto as the Batman because of the 10 years he spent in Dolly's attic.
Not because he was a superhero.
Yeah.
He wasn't a superhero.
I mean, come on. He was basically a boy. He was like a victim. Yeah. Now, granted, he murdered Fred, but...
I think the gun went off by accident the first time, but he ended up, obviously... But,
we're talking about a mentally scarred, damaged, like a sex slave. He was a sex slave.
He was a sex slave. Mm-hmm.
Faced with a manslaughter charge, Otto pled not guilty by reason of insanity.
Good.
Which is probably pretty
accurate.
Pretty
accurate.
His defense argued that the older Dolly had groomed Otto. I would agree with that. As a 17-year-old child. And imprisoned him in her attic as a sex slave.
Yep.
Where she had isolated him from the rest of society, which she had, and made his whole world revolve around her arse.
Revolve.
Yeah. She was his only human contact for years, and this isolation had severely compromised his mental health and judgment.
Yeah.
However, the jury looking at the man on the stand didn't buy this defense, and he was found guilty of manslaughter.
Yeah.
However, he was then released without serving a single day in jail because the statute of limitation had expired for manslaughter, and thus he could not be sentenced.
Oh.
So why the fuck did they bother going through a trial in the first place?
Because I've known that before.
To go through with it all.
I mean, that cost a lot of money to go through that trial.
Yeah, because no matter what the outcome, it wouldn't have.
Yeah. The statute of limitations had expired a year before. So it couldn't be put in prison. So why bother having a fucking trial?
See, this is also...
But it also does... If that had been a woman on the stand and it had been reversed, that jury would have come to a completely different fucking conclusion.
Well, yes and no, because I was going to say... Well, yeah, they would. Yeah, because the other way around. But, like, with the age thing, because they looked across and saw a man there instead of a child or a young teenager.
It wasn't because it was a man instead of a child. If it had been a woman instead of a child,
yeah,
they still would have saw it differently.
What I was going to say was that is true, because with women also who have things happen to them at a young age, they see the woman stand there, obviously, because years later, and they don't believe me.
In my opinion, it's a perfectly valid defence. And if the rules had been reversed, and this had been an older man who had started doing this to a 17-year-old girl,
it
would have been perceived entirely differently by both the media and the jury.
Yeah.
Even though, thankfully, the statute of limitations had run out, because he didn't really deserve to spend any time in prison, because he'd already spent 10 years imprisoned in her attic. You got to think it in terms of, like, if an older male had done this to a 17-year-old girl, it would have been fucking scandalous.
Right.
And even, admittedly, in my own mind, when I reversed it in my own mind, it seemed a little bit more shocking, but it shouldn't. It shouldn't. But that's just the way we're programmed as a society.
Well, even now, if you were to hear this story in modern day about someone being kept in an attic,
Yeah,
and used under such conditions, you're going to be sympathetic and empathetic to that child.
Because as a young teenager male, at first, even today, when people are like, "Hey, way to go," sort of thing, you know. He's having a time of his life.
I mean, sort of I will admit, when I changed it in my mind to if it was reversed, it did seem a bit more shocking, and it really shouldn't. But I think that's, as a society, how we've been programmed to see things, and we shouldn't.
Yeah.
But even like Jamie's like with the whole high five thing, that's one thing if it was happening free will and coming and going as he pleased. That was not the case here at all.
Yeah. So, is it me?
Yeah.
Yeah. During the trial, it was revealed that over the years, Dolly and Otto would argue quite a lot, constantly, basically, mainly about the frequency that Dolly demanded sex. As a punishment for this, Dolly would lock him in the attic for extended periods and refuse to let him out, even when Fred was out. She'd refuse to let him out until he behaved himself and gave her what she wanted. He felt trapped. He had absolutely nothing. She'd made sure he had nothing. He relied on her for everything. A roof over his head, food, everything. He had nothing. And if he was to try and end this relationship, he's going to end up homeless and penniless. This is all he's got. His only power in that relationship was through going on hunger strikes and refusing to eat. And this let him get his own way a little bit, because Dolly got worried eventually that he was going to make himself ill and something was going to happen to him. So she did relent eventually. But that was his only power, was like to refuse to eat. Dolly faced a tougher battle on her conspiracy charges, as she had on several occasions concealed evidence and lied to the police. She had involved numerous others in this conspiracy, stupid bitch, making them somewhat complicit in her crimes. Nevertheless, Dolly's immense wealth, which, by the way, was Fred's money, gave her the best legal team that money could buy. The defence argued that there was not enough evidence to prove that Dolly was in any way complicit in Fred's actual murder or in Otto's actions that fateful evening. The defence argued that her disposing of the guns and keeping a man in her fucking attic and giving the watch to Shapiro were all circumstantial to the actual death of Fred. Technically, they were right. It had nothing to do with his death. And she didn't actually pull the trigger, but she did put together the events that led to the death. And although her having her sex slave in the attic isn't technically a crime, it is morally reprehensible. Her trial resulted in a hung jury. And it was several more years later that this conspiracy charge, they didn't try her again, but several more years later, it was finally thrown out in 1936 because he couldn't do it. And there's a little picture there of a little team of lawyers.
Her little dream team.
Loads of lawyers. I think this one at the end is a district attorney, but these are all our lawyers.
Yeah, like her dream team.
Mm-hmm. Probably sleeping with them as well, I should imagine.
Yes,
you know it, yeah.
Yeah, would surprise me.
And just a little newspaper clip in here as well. Look at this one. Yeah. There's a picture of Dolly. This newspaper I've actually got. I've enhanced this so I could read it for you as well. What it says down the bottom. Oesterreich, she said, parked his car in the driveway and unlocked the front door for her. Then snapped on the lights in a front room. As Mrs. Oesterreich went upstairs, she said her husband started towards the rear of the house and she never saw him alive again. This is her original story.
Okay.
After I turned on the light in my room, I heard a noise as though my husband had tripped on the rugs. Why would you think rug? That was a noise you heard. Oh, he's tripped on a rug. She told the police, just as I placed my coat in the hook, I heard 3 shots as I turned to run out the closet. As I turned to run out, the closet door was slammed and locked in my face. That was her story at the time. And it sounds like a load of bullshit to me, and I can understand why they thought she was guilty at the time.
Yeah.
Because it sounds shit, Dolly. It's a shit story.
It does, yeah.
Well, she had a way of getting them to believe her for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. She's master manipulator of anything.
Absolutely.
After his release, Otto disappeared into obscurity. His wife Matilda apparently stood by him, understanding that what Dolly did to him was basically prolonged psychological abuse. Which
Good,
it was.
and good for her, but I do believe that he was having an affair with Dolly while he was married to her. So,
yeah.
But good for her for standing by him and seeing that.
Dolly remained a scandalous member of LA high society, but she had lost her admiration. She became more of a circus attraction.
Yeah, just like people, oh, I know her. Like, almost like, oh, I know Dolly. Dolly,
Yeah.
Dolly, the slut. I know her.
She gradually dwindled away the vast sums of money she inherited from Fred's estate, some of which was lost in the 1929 stock market crash. By the 50s, her fortunes had declined to the extent that she was living above a garage in a sketchy LA neighborhood. So she's
Kind
in
of
the
an attic.
Kind of an attic. I was just going to say that.
The lifestyle she was accustomed to had deteriorated, and she aged. And as she was no longer able to attract the parade of willing men to satisfy.
I don't know if she attracted them before, though. I really don't know how she attracted them before. I just can't.
Sometimes it isn't about looks.
Yeah, but as she got older, she wasn't getting
able to manipulate them.
Yeah.
She then rekindled her relationship with Ray Hedrick.
Now, you might recognize the name Hedrick. Do you remember the name Hedrick?
Wasn't he the one, not the original, not the textile company?
No, he's the one whose wife sued her.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
she rekindled the relationship with him.
Yeah.
However, wait for it.
The man whose wife had sued her for years previously for breaking up their marriage, they maintained a relationship for over 30 years.
30 years. The next 30 years they stayed together.
Dolly eventually married Hendrick just 2 weeks before her death at the age of 80.
Right, wait a minute, because I've got pictures.
On
Oh my
April
goodness.
the 8th,
You want some of her money back?
Is that one? A minute. No. Oh, just before we get onto that, then, because I forgot this picture. That's Otto and his wife Matilda. Now called Walter Klein. They kept the name Klein.
Okay.
This is Mrs. Walburga Oesterreich and the real estate man Ray Hedrick getting their wedding license when she's 80, 2 weeks before she died.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's
Look at
Ray
how
Hedrick, the attorney. She's very frail. The two men are helping her out of the marriage license bureau, and she is almost collapsing. They had to get a wheelchair for her, so she was obviously dying at the time.
Yeah. So why is he going through it?
Finally married him.
Yeah. It is reported that she finally managed to remain faithful in this last relationship with Ray. But whether she had other lovers, you never know. Where she was hiding them is unknown. But yeah.
Apparently, she remained faithful, but I'm not buying it.
No.
You don't think at 80 she was faithful?
Well, maybe at 80, but I mean, not for the whole 30 years. I don't think she remained faithful
yeah.
for 30 years.
Oh,
I
no.
don't think so.
Mm-mm.
And so that is the story of Dolly
It's a strange, bizarre case.
Oesterreich and her bizarre love triangle /square /pentagon /hexagon / whatever.
Wow.
Yeah.
And her sex slave in the attic who ended up killing her husband, and nobody ever faced consequences really for Fred's.
So was this ever like turned into a movie or anything? Because this
the story's been loosely used for a couple of movies. There was a movie called The Man in the Attic.
Man in the Attic, funny enough.
Oh.
And, there's been a couple of things been done throughout the past, but not quite to this same level.
I can't see what was so appealing about her though. I just can't see it.
Kelly, yeah.
I don't know what was going on because it's like, and they cover for him. The lawyer got involved.
Yeah, but the lawyer knew everything.
They all knew.
But he moved in with her and stayed with her for 7 years before he went to the place.
And why did she start giving people guns? You know,
Yeah,
to
she
go and
could've-
hide for
I'm
them.
telling
Why
you-
did they do it?
I'm telling you, if we look back in this in a different angle, this woman had like occult ties or was some
Yeah.
kind of witchery
Oh, yeah.
because
There's something weird. I told you it was fucking weird. It's weird.
yeah, she had to have some kind of spell or something on
It's
these.
got to be, yeah.
But I just, if that had been
Yeah.
if that had been the man
Keeping
with
the
a young
17
17-year-old girl and keeping her for 10
At
years
least.
locked in the attic,
Yeah,
that would have been a completely different outcome.
absolutely. But it would have been one thing for these guys to have a sexual interest, right? Or to come back and forth, but to stick around and
through all that crap.
yes.
But she's a lazy bitch. She wasn't doing anything.
She's lazy.
She the only thing she's doing is like having sex multiple times a day with multiple men.
Oh,
He's doing all the housework. She couldn't even dispose of the guns on her own. She could have flung it in a tar pit or gone and flung it in the ocean
It's
or
actually-
buried it somewhere. But she's got these other two men involved. What the?
Why?
Why?
I think they were involved with her sexually, and she did that to help keep them coming to her because they might have left her because she, and then they wouldn't dare leave because they took part in this thing. That's how I can see. That's the justification that I can see them doing it. That obviously she's got them to do it because if not, I'll tell your wife that we've been having an affair if you don't do that. That's what I would think. But yeah, that's kind of strange.
she definitely had something on all of them after, like you said, it's kind of like a bribery, blackmail
Yeah.
kind of story, especially knowing
Kelly says, well, come on, Lisa, that much sex would motivate a man. Well, not really, because Otto was in a lot of pain. He was suffering. He didn't want to do it.
Otto,
He was going on hunger strike to stop her doing it.
I bet he was on auto half the time.
Yeah.
That was a bit too much.
I don't know.
Too much.
Yeah,
Otto was on auto.
And how these people forgive him and believe her. That's where, like you say,
I do agree that she shouldn't have faced conspiracy for murder charges because it wasn't a murder. It wasn't planned. It was actually
No, but you know what? Okay,
she should have faced some. There should be some law that she broke by psychologically breaking that man down and imprisoning him for 10 years from the age of 17.
absolutely. And adultery is illegal, right? Adultery, at least, was illegal. But
she should have faced some consequences.
Yeah.
Otto was basically human trafficked to herself.
Yeah.
Trafficking.
It's human trafficking, yeah.
To the point of him being hurt and in pain or whatever, and who knows what else. I mean, come on, if you can't.
She was also punishing him when he wasn't doing what he was told and lock him in.
Yes, and you can't tell me that.
I mean, how psychologically damaging is it that also he was like cooking all the meals for Fred and ironing Fred's shirts and doing Fred's laundry and then sitting up in that attic listening to her having sex with Fred.
It's all control, isn't it, when you think about it?
Psychological damage that had done to him over 10 years.
And there had to be infection or disease or something else going on with this much history.
There's bound to have been. There's bound to have been some.
I don't know.
She was spreading it about a bit.
Literally.
James Bond.
Literally.
And how she managed to live to 80 after that fucking lifestyle, I have no idea.
I
So yeah,
should have donated her brain to science and.
Yeah. So Danielle, you knew nothing about this case.
I never
You can now answer the question in the quiz. Name 3 dollies.
Yeah.
But what do you think of Dolly Oesterreich?
She was a piece of work. She was quite the tool. I mean, she obviously wasn't right in her own head, and to have that you almost wonder about her past because these kind of things like repeat themselves. Not that she was like a sex slave, but there might have been abuse in there.
She was like a severe sex addict.
I know, because that's beyond normalcy. I mean, and to do that to somebody and a young man, and then to compare it to her son, I know.
I know.
That was weird. The relationship that she wanted to develop with him, and the fact that when she initially locked eyes with him, that first time that she saw him in the factory, it reminded her of her dead 9-year-old child. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck? Weird.
And then you wonder too, because we're talking turn of the century, and you're thinking about birth control and stuff like that. You got to wonder, like, There was no
Well-
talk of like pregnancy, but you can't tell me that.
They wouldn't maybe look up the
Well,
accidents
we'll say how sort of people can be sort of depraved and do things these days that they wouldn't have done in the past. But here we are. We're seeing that similar sort of things, like people take relationships less serious now than they used to, but maybe not. Maybe
you couldn't make this shit up.
I don't know. When my first instinct and everything is I have such empathy or sympathy, I should say, for Otto. I feel bad for that. Yeah. I have sympathy for what he endured, and at some point, and at some point you're like, oh, he's an adult. He went off on his own. Why did you come back? And that kind of thing. But you got to figure he went through years of psychological enslavement. And she molded him.
Broke him down. She broke him down.
Like I say, on one level, it's quite humorous, like some of the stories. But when you see it, it isn't. And the same as at the start of the story, you think, oh, well, that's sort of like Homer. Well, he's getting it, no harm done, and all this lot.
And I normally like when I look into cases and like people have done some quite horrific, horrible things. And then they've evaded the law for so long that I always bitched to Jamie about this watching true crime. This fucking statute of limitations bullshit needs to be scrapped because people get away with shit because of this statute of limitations. But this case is the only case that I was like, well, good, thank God that because he's already been in prison for 10 years and he did not deserve to be punished for that because the psychological damage. That's the only time I've ever thought. Thank God for the statute of limitations. Yeah. In general, I think it's fucking stupid, and you shouldn't have it. You shouldn't be able to commit a crime and then,
especially because the crimes affect people in a lifelong way. So why shouldn't that lifelong?
You shouldn't be able to like evade capture for X amount of time and then
Jamie talks about there were some humorous points. To me, the humor of it all was the stupidity on the people
that weird that is funny.
Yes, especially the lawyer, the people that should have known, but they weren't victimized in that way. I swear she's got she had some witchcraft going on.
She's got something going on.
And these people couldn't have been that stupid. I
wouldn't
say Fred with his businesses, he couldn't have been that stupid,
I wouldn't say that she was an ugly woman. She's a mid-range. There's nothing standing out about her.
Not to have them lining up and
she's got them all under the thumb, and they're burying guns for her. And he's even moving in with her after being told what she's done to 10 years.
Well, what? And you're talking about successful men in their own right. They had careers. And
they're not stupid men.
Businessmen and
they're quite intelligent men. But what the fuck's going on?
Even though I was writing, that's he
was actually during this time, which he was writing these short stories, and she was sending them away on his behalf because obviously he couldn't go anywhere, and he was a published author.
No kidding.
He was quite successful as an author, even though he was trapped in the Arctic.
Originally, I thought when I found out he was a writer, I thought the beans were going to be spilt by him writing a story about what he was up to. That's how I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Like, that's how they found out, but no.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I never heard this story before. Very interesting indeed.
It's fucked up.
It is, and you can't. Again, like I said, you can't make that stuff up. That's the stuff movies are made about. It's definitely the stuff movies are made about and fiction is made about.
Yeah.
You know what makes you wonder? This only came to light because what the tragic events that happened because Otto thought she was in danger and he ended up getting shot. How many times is shit like this going on
that you didn't
hear about, you didn't know about?
Very true.
People like getting held as sex slaves.
Yeah.
In similar circumstances.
I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, we know that we know.
Well, that there's like human trafficking is a massive problem.
But again, it's usually on the opposite scale, right? It's usually a young female that's being kept.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you wonder if this was happening at this time. This couldn't have been like the only. Granted, it was probably more rare at this time, but it's been going back that far, if not further.
A lot of people wouldn't see this as a problem because it is the way it is. You're a young man with an older woman and things like that. But the other way they would see the problem. Now, in more recent times, when X Factor was on, when what was the name, that kid? these women, he was like 15 or something like that. He was taking part in X-Files. And these women who was 30 odd were going, "Oh, okay, I'll do anything to get bed." And people were laughing. Even the celebrities were hanging around trying to bed him.
Yeah, 15-year-old
like,
boy.
he's,
And I'm like, oh, he's a
underage,
gorgeous young. But
everyone's
like, really?
laughing and thinking that, yeah, this, Harry Styles, that's it. He was a little bit of a prick, to be honest. But
Yeah.
and it didn't see, and even now that didn't seem to be a problem. Yet it is. It's like, yeah, if it was a 15-year-old girl there going up and singing, and the men were like, yeah, and hanging around, that would be completely different. So it's really strange. It's really strange how people's perspectives change.
It's societal, isn't it?
It is. I was just going to say it's just a messed up world. So
I don't know.
So that is all that we have got time for.
So that's another famous Dolly to keep in mind. Okay.
Unfortunately, that's all we've got time for this week.
Yes.
We will see you next Tuesday.
Yep, you can say that again.
We're back to Tuesdays and we can say it again. Danielle, when will we see them, Danielle?
We'll see you next Tuesday.
Yeah.
We will.
And we'll be back then with a mystery for you. Just a little break for true crime. We'll have a little bit of a mystery for you. And
I missed y'all. It's great being back.
Yeah, make sure to tune in. And I think Danielle might be there because it's a Tuesday.
That's right.
Just a rumour I might have heard.
I plan on it.
Take care of yourselves. Make sure to like, subscribe, share, tell your friends.
And don't forget to check your attics, everyone.
Tell your friends. And if you've got a spouse or a partner who has got a lock on a door in your house, or they've locked attic,
get a locksmith.
Some area or room that you've not got access to, fucking go and check what's in there, because you never know. You never know.
You never know.
All right, thank you very much for watching, everyone.
Yeah, we will see you next time. Let me just find out, Drew. Bye-bye, everybody.
Goodbye.